All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon po sa inyong lahat today. Thank you for joining us, spending time ng yung Friday afternoon to Friday night, learning how you can possibly invest based on your life goals. Right? So again, dun sa mga pumapasok pa, those who are just joining us, welcome. Thank you for joining. Okay, so today, yung title ng webinar natin is Picking the Right Funds Based on Your Life Goals. So what we hope to discuss today is ano ba yung iba't ibang types ng funds and how do we use it to invest for our goals in life. Ayan. Okay. But before we start, let's just check ano ba yung idea ng audience natin when it comes to investing. Right? So I just have a question here. Are all investments for the long term? Yan. Okay. So let's see, ano bang perception ng mga viewers natin today? Are all investments for the long term? Okay. Right, so let's just wait for some of the answers to come in. Right. And there, okay, let's share the results. Yan, ito po yung sabi ng ating audience today, no? Half of our viewers said, or sorry, 60%, more than half, no? 57%, more than half of our viewers today said na no, not all investments are for the long term. Okay? So likely mas knowledgeable na po sila on what other investment options are out there. For those naman that answered yes or maybe, right? Maybe ito yung mga viewers natin that could still learn from our webinar today na actually meron pong iba't ibang types of investments that could be suited for your short-term, medium-term, and your long-term needs. So yan po yung itatackle natin today. Okay. Now, before we go to the different kinds of investment or fund investments, let's first look at ano ba yung mga typical na pinaglalaanan ng pera ng bawat individual. Okay? So normally po, meron tayong apat na pinaglalaanan. Yan yung tinatawag natin emergency needs and cash, imminent goals, yung ating future lifestyle support, and yung aspirational goals. Yan. So yan po yung tinatawag nating 4 buckets. Yan yung mga typical nating pinaglalaanan sa buhay. So isa-isahin po natin yan. So unang-una yung emergency needs and cash. Now ito po yung money that we intend for medical or home emergencies. Yan, kaya po emergency needs. Or yan din naman po yung mga expenses na inaasahan nating mangyayari or gagamitin natin within less than a year. Yan yung mga immediate expenses natin. That's for our cash. Next, andyan naman po yung imminent goals. So imminent goals po yan yung pera na inilalaan natin for very specific goals na we expect to happen in the next 1 to 5 years. Now, ano pong magandang example niyan? So let's say you're planning to have a wedding the next few years, those na nagpaplanong mag-aral for their future studies, right? Or maybe yung sa iba sa inyo naging parte ng homebodies nung nagka-pandemic and now it want to renovate their home, yan, home renovation. So yan po yung tinatawag nating imminent goals. So the goals that we expect to happen in the next few years. Pangatlo, yan naman po yung future lifestyle support. So karamihan po ng nag-i-invest or investors, ito po talaga yung pinaglalaanan nila ng kanilang investment, the future lifestyle support. So this is money intended for the distant future. Right? So typically ito po yung for more than 5 years, tulad ng retirement or yung college education ng ating children. So yan po yung pangatlo, future lifestyle support. Now, the fourth one is yung tinatawag nating aspirational goals. Now, this is the money intended to be used to take on high-risk investments to capture the possibility of extraordinary returns. So, napakaganda pong pakinggan, no? Extraordinary returns. But always, when those kinds of returns are put into place, kailangan po maalala natin that meron itong kaakibat na mataas na risk. So it means na ito po yung those who want to go into stock trading or other trading ng ibang financial instruments, normal po may kaakibat yan na high risk. And you have to learn how to do it. So kailangan po nagre-research kayo, you understand what's happening in the market. Yan naman po yung para sa ating aspirational goals. Now, so balikan lang po natin ulit. Emergency needs and cash, imminent goals, future lifestyle support, and aspirational goals. Yan. So, let's just check sa audience natin today, no? Which of these goals yung pinaka-pinaglalaanan nyo po ngayon in your life? So, wala pong tamang sagot. You can answer more than one option. No, let's just see which of these goals yung pinaglalaanan nyo po at this point. Right, so we're seeing a lot of different answers. Merong imminent goals, emergency needs. Okay. Right, so let's close the poll in 3 seconds. And all right, so let's share the results. Yan, so we can see po, karamihan ng investors, really ang pinaglalaanan nila is yung tinatawag nating future lifestyle support. Okay. Then second, no, is yung emergency needs and cash. And then the rest is yung imminent goals and aspirational goals. Okay. Okay. So sa iba't ibang tao po, iba't iba yung combination nila ng bawat goals na yan. And nararapat lang din po na yung goals na to, since iba-iba yung pangangailangan niya, iba't ibang kinds of investment instruments din yung pinaglalaanan nyo nung pera nyo for those goals. And that's what we're going to talk about today is yung tinatawag nating fund investments or yung mutual funds and UITFs. Yeah. So mutual funds and UITFs. The easy way to grow your money in multiple ways. So bakit naman po natin nasabing easy way to grow your money? Well, una po, puntahan muna natin para dun sa mga hindi familiar, ano ba yung mutual funds or UITFs? Right? So isa po siyang type ng investment kung saan pinagsasama-sama natin yung pera ng iba't ibang investors. So for example po, dito sa webinar natin today, bawat isa po sa atin may 1,000 pesos. So ang ginagawa po ng mutual funds or UITF, pinagsasama-sama po niya yung 1,000 natin. So dahil pinagsasama-sama po niya yun, makakabuo siya ng isang malaking halaga. Now from that will be, so yung pooled money po na yun, yun naman po yung i-invest ng isang fund manager. So the fund manager will do the investing and pwede po siya mag-invest in equities, bonds, money market, or iba pong investment instruments. Now, mutual funds are great because unang-una, sabi po natin, they are easy to access. Okay? So for as low as 1,000 pesos, pwede na po kayong makapag-invest in a mutual fund. And now that everything is online, mas madali na pong ma-access yung mga ganitong products by just with a click of a button. Next is they are professionally managed. So meron pong fund manager na nagmamanage ng fund. And because of that, you're able to tap yung expertise nila, right? So that gives you time to pursue other activities in your life. So they can manage the investing for you. Next is dahil nga po pinagsasama-sama natin yung pera ng iba't ibang investors, we are able to access different kinds of investments. Okay? So that's what we call yung stocks, yung equities, pwede rin po yung bonds, and yung money market. So later, for those who are not familiar with bonds and money market instruments, we'll also discuss ano yung mga investments na yan. Okay. And last but not the least, funds are great because they can also be invested in global securities. So mutual funds po and UITF can access investment opportunities even outside the Philippines. Right? So yan po isa sa main advantages ng fund investments. Okay. Now, normally po, when people go to us, they only know na meron lang isang type of fund. Akala nila there's only an equity fund or yung fund na nag-i-invest in stocks. But actually, there are 4 basic types of mutual funds or UITFs. Yan po yung tinatawag nating money market fund, bond fund, balance fund, and equity fund. Okay? So to summarize, ano ba yung iba't ibang types of funds na yan? Let me share with you this video.
In this video, we'll talk about the different types of mutual funds, where it is invested, and how it can be an effective investment for you. There are 4 types of mutual funds: money market funds, bond funds, equity funds, and balance funds. Money market funds. These funds are invested in special savings accounts like term deposits. It has a very low risk profile, so it is best for short-term needs. By investing in a money market fund, you can earn higher returns than banks. There's also bond funds. These funds are invested in corporate and government bonds. It has a low to moderate risk profile, so it's best for earning a stable return for the medium term of 1 to 5 years. Next is equity funds. These funds are invested in equities or stocks. It has a high risk profile, and it is ideal to invest in if you want to get high returns for long-term investing. There are different kinds of equity funds. An equity index fund is a special kind of equity fund. This fund copies the performance of the top 30 companies in the Philippines, which are part of the PSEI or Philippine Stock Exchange Index. And finally, balance funds. These funds are invested in a combination of stocks and bonds. It has a medium risk profile, and it is best for long-term investing, especially if you have a low risk tolerance and you don't want to put all your money in stocks. Now here's a summary of the funds and their uses: money market fund, bond fund, equity fund, and balance fund.
All right. So now we saw a summary of ano ba iba't ibang types of mutual funds and UITFs. Now, paano ba natin magagamit yung iba't ibang kinds of investments na yan for our goals and needs in life? Okay. So, unahin po muna natin yung money market funds. So, sabi nga po dun sa video, it's invested in special savings accounts or deposit products and other short-term instruments. Okay. So ito po yung matatawag natin mga term deposits. Okay. So it could be used for your idle cash or your emergency funds. Dahil nga the fund or money market funds are typically very low risk. And you can use it while waiting for market opportunities. So for those who are more knowledgeable here in our audience na nag-invest sa stocks, right? You can use this while you are waiting for market opportunities. So pwedeng dyan nyo muna itabi yung pera nyo, and then pag gusto nyo nang gamitin or invest in other instruments, then tsaka nyo po siya pwede ilipat. So again, you can use this for your idle cash or while waiting for market opportunities. Okay, so bakit naman po better to access money market funds compared to your bank savings? So again, dahil po pinagsasama-sama natin yung pera ng iba't ibang investors, we're able to get better rates compared to if you did this individually through your bank. So meaning, if you have a time deposit in your bank, kaya po we're able to get better rates. Yan. So yan, the last 3 years, the average return ng money market fund is 2.5% compared sa traditional savings account in banks na only 0.2%. Okay. Right. Next is yung bond funds. So yung bond funds naman po, nag-i-invest siya in corporate or government bonds. So these are debt instruments. So type po ito ng pautang kung saan yung gobyerno o yung iba't kumpanya ay nagpapautang sa mga investors. So kadalasan po maririnig niyo yung government bonds, yan din po yung treasury bills, treasury notes, and so those are some of examples of bond instruments. So how could you use it? So dun po sa video kanina, we saw that bond funds are generally low risk and have stable returns. So to clarify lang yung stable returns. Pag sinabi po nating stable, ibig sabihin po nun ay hindi magalaw yung price ng investment. Right? But it doesn't mean that it is guaranteed return. So yun po yung difference when we say stable return versus guaranteed return. Okay. Right? So it could be used for your medium-term goals. That's for 1 to 5 years. Or if you want to manage yung risk ng stock investing if it's too risky for you. Right? So that's where you could use bond funds. Okay. Right? So bakit naman po bond funds? Well, actually, you can access these kinds of investments. You can invest directly into bonds, but normally it takes a lot of capital. So the typical minimum po to invest in a bond is around 100,000 to 1 million pesos. Kaya naman po, through bond funds, you can start with as easy as 1,000 to 5,000 pesos. And again, that's because pinagsasama-sama po natin yung pera natin in a fund and we're able to invest it all together. Right? So in the last 3 years, the average return po nung bond funds has been 3 to 5%. So historically, yan po yung naging performance nila. Next is yung balanced fund. So ito naman po is invested in a combination of stocks and bonds. So it could be used for your medium to long-term goals. And again, pwede nyo rin po siyang gamitin to manage the risk of stock investing. So pwede ito for your imminent or your long-term goals. And last is yung equity funds. So equity funds, ito po yung tinatawag natin, or ito po yung funds na nag-i-invest sa equities or stocks. So for our purposes today, isa lang po yung equities and stocks. So if you hear equities, ibig sabihin lang po is nag-i-invest din siya in stocks. So equity funds po, because it invests in the stock market, can be used for your long-term goals. Right? So typically, yung long-term goals po na yan is more than 5 years. Okay. Right. Now, one of the best types of equity funds is yung tinatawag nating equity index fund. Right? So yung equity index fund po, yan yung nag-i-invest sa top 30 companies in the Philippines or yung tinatawag nating PSEI or yung Philippine Stock Exchange Index. Right? So I'm pretty sure familiar po kayo with the companies that you're seeing there. So these are the 30 largest and most traded companies in the Philippines. So sa equity index fund po, nag-i-invest siya by just copying the allocation of the index. So kung ano po yung laman ng PSEI, yun din po yung laman ng equity index fund. Right? So ginagaya lang po ng equity index fund yung performance ng PSEI. So from 2001 to 2021, yung average yearly return po ng PSEI has been 9.6% per annum. Right? But again, because is invested in stocks, hindi naman po yan every year ganyan. So there are times where this goes up, there are times where this goes down. But on average, yung performance po niya has been 9.6%. Okay, so summarize po natin ulit. So money market fund, that's ideal for earning more than the bank because you have very low risk and pwede po siya for short term. Right? So yung bond fund has a low risk and it's good for your medium-term goals na 1 to 5 years because it provides you a stable return. And then for those that merong stock exposure tulad ng balanced and equity funds, right? Yan naman po yung ating for medium to long-term investing needs, right? Because of the risks involved. So for balanced fund, that's moderate risk. For equity funds, yung po yung high risk. So typically, that's 5 years or more when it comes to your investment horizon. Okay. Right. So bakit po natin sinishare itong mga risk and return profile na to of the different kinds of funds? And that's because yung risk return po niyan, right? So what I'll show you is the maximum positive 1-year performance ng bawat funds. Meaning sa isang taon po in the last 16 years from 2005 to 2021, ito po yung pinakamataas na naging performance nung mutual funds na yun for a single year. Right? But at the same time, ano naman po yung pinaka-largest drawdown or pinaka-negative na performance ng fund during that time? Right? Yan. So yan naman po yung largest drawdown or largest negative return of the different types of fund during that year. So what are we trying to show here? So what we're trying to show here is that bakit we're advocating that for other types of funds, they're really best for your long-term needs. Right? Tulad nung ating equity or balance fund, because there is volatility in the stock market, kaya you're subjected to risk if you do it in the short term. Okay. Okay. And this is very important po, especially with what's happening today, right? So if some of you are reading the news, you know that the PSEI has been going down, right, since the start of the year, so the PSEI. But this isn't just happening in the Philippines. This is also happening in other countries tulad ng US. So US has also been going down, and that's because yung tinatawag nating inflation. So inflation has been rising because mas mataas na yung gas and food prices. So makikita nyo po sa left, yung inflation in the Philippines has already reached 6.1% noong June, whereas yung inflation naman po sa US is 9.1% din noong June. Right? So because of that, right, it's causing market volatility or yung pagbaba po ng stock market. But what we've observed long term is that during these times, eventually nagre-recover din po yung market. And that's why we do remind yung investors of assessing itong risk-return profile ng bawat mutual funds. Right? So you understand the potential and the risks of the investment. Okay. Now, kanina pinag-usapan po natin yung iba't ibang goals. Now, ngayon, iba't ibang funds. So paano naman po natin pagtatagpi-tagpiin yan? So how could you use these kinds of funds for your different goals? Well, nung una po, for your liquid cash or your emergency fund, andyan po yung money market, right? So your money market funds, or pwede rin po your bank products or e-wallets. For your imminent goals, those na inaasahan nyo to happen in the next 1 to 5 years, pwede po yung bond funds, right? Because of the low risk and generally stable return. For our future lifestyle support, ito po yung goal natin that we expect to happen more than 5 years from now. Right? You can invest it in equity funds or balanced funds, right? Because over the long term, right, yung stock investments po niyan are expected to rise in the long term. And then for our aspirational goals, dito naman po papasok yung direct stocks or specialized funds or alternative investments. Now, marami po sa amin nagtatanong, paano ko naman i-allocate yung pera ko sa iba't ibang kinds ng investment na yan? So, 30% pa dito, 20%, 40%. And actually, the answer po is really depending on your priorities and needs in life. Right? So, iba't ibang tao po, iba't iba yung pinaglalaanan nila nung kanilang investment. And tulad nung nakita natin kanina. But to give you some example how you could probably apply yung ganitong kind of approach, right? So bigay tayong example. We have here si Jessie. So Jessie is a millennial, so batang-bata po siya. And she wants to grow her travel fund. So na-stuck siya nung pandemic and gusto niya mag-travel in the next 2 years. So meron siyang 35,000 pesos na naitabi and it's currently only in the bank. Now she wants to travel in the next 2 years, right? So a good investment for Jessie is bond funds, right? Again, that's because bond funds are generally stable return and gagamitin naman niya in the next 2 years. Okay, so it's less risky compared to stocks, provides stable returns, they generally higher return than banks. Okay, second goal ni Jessie. Right? She wants to earn better returns on her emergency fund. Right? So right now, meron na siyang 20,000 na itabi na currently nasa bank. So for her emergency funds, she can put it in a money market fund. Okay. So paano po yung magiging itsura ng investments ni Jessie? Right? So for her travel money, how much? 35,000. How long? 2 years. A good investment for her is a bond fund. For her emergency fund, 20,000. How long? Hindi natin masabi. Could be immediate. So it's on a money market fund. Right? Okay. Now we have here naman si Mark. Okay. So Mark plans to have a wedding in the future. Okay. So he wants to grow his wedding fund. Ngayon, naghihintay po siya to use it in the next 2 years. Right? So meron siya na itabi na 250,000 na plano na niyang gamitin immediately. And then meron na siyang 250,000 na gagamitin niya on the year of his wedding. So paano po niya pwede i-split? So the 250,000 na intending niya gamitin soon in a money market fund. And then for it, the rest na intends to use in the next 2 years, dyan naman po yung bond fund. Now, maaga po si Mark, no? Hindi pa siya kasal pero gusto niya mag-prepare for the college education of his children. So inaasahan niya that in the next 18 years, yung estimated cost of education is around 1 million pesos. Right? So for that, meron na siya nakaalat ngayon pa lang na 50,000 pesos, but he wants to invest continuously ng 3,000 per month para mapalaki niya yung education fund for his children. So the best investment for that would be an equity or an equity index fund. And again, that's because yung long-term approach ni Mark could ride out yung market volatility o yung up and down ng stock market. And by investing regularly, mas napapalaki po niya yung investment niya through the power of compounding. Yan. Okay. So by doing that, ano na yung magiging itsura ng investment portfolio ni Mark? Okay, so for his wedding money, 500,000 pesos in the next 2 years, pwedeng in a money market fund or a bond fund. For the college education of his children, right, that he expects 18 years from now, could be in an equity fund or an equity index fund. Okay. Right. So what we saw today is that actually there's a mutual fund combination that's right for you. So iba-iba pong tao, may iba't ibang kinds of combination na pwede for their mutual funds. And I hope we were able to show you how you could use these kinds of investments to make them work for your life goals. Okay. Recap lang po tayo. So how do you pick funds based on your life goals? Una, determine your investment bucket. So alin po dun sa apat na pinakita natin. Emergency needs and cash, imminent goals, future lifestyle support, or aspirational goals. Then, choose a fund for each bucket. Right? And pangatlo is create a combination of funds for your life goals. Yan. Okay. And ganun lang po, ganun lang kadali to pick funds based on your goals. Now, sa COL po, you're able to access these kinds of investments, both stocks and mutual funds. And now, meron na rin po kaming available na UITFs for you to access. So we've been in this industry for 23 years now and trusted by over 500,000 clients. Right? So sa COL po, right, you can invest in mutual funds straight from your COL account. And you have 51 funds to choose from, right? From different fund managers tulad ng First Metro, Sun Life, PhilEquity, ALFM, and Atram. So you can choose from the different funds offered by different fund houses. Okay. So if for those na wala pang account but want to have a look at these kinds of investments, madali lang po, 3 easy steps. Just follow the link, signup.colfinancial.com. And then ready your requirements, sign up and submit, and then fund your account. For those naman po that already have a COL account, you can go to the mutual fund tab on the upper right hand page ng COL. And then you could visit yung mutual fund platform namin, yung COL Fund Source. So there you could type in your orders and place your order entry for mutual funds. Right? Okay, so for more investing guidance, follow us at COL Financial. Okay. For more guidance particular to funds, you could actually email us at mutualfunds@colfinancial.com.